On this Tuesday night, 4 men, including 2 military members, hit with terrorism charges.
The 4 individuals that we arrested were definitely anti-authority, anti-government.
What police say the group was plotting, the large cache of weapons they seized, and fears far-right extremists are gaining momentum. Sounding the alarm, the criticism Texans were not properly warned about an impending disaster. A so-called humanitarian city.
It's a crime against humanity.
Israel's plan to confine all Palestinians to one camp. Plus, blind ambition.
Gotta be positive about it.
A Canadian teenager's creation to help people with their eye health.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. 4 men in Quebec, including 2 active members of the Canadian Armed Forces, have been arrested and charged with planning to forcibly seize land near Quebec City and form an anti-government militia. Police say the men had stockpiled weapons, ammunition and tactical gear and were preparing to facilitate terrorist activity. Police describe it as an act of ideologically motivated violent extremism. Touria Izri has our top story tonight.
Military-style training, a cache of explosives, and dozens of firearms. RCMP evidence in an alleged domestic terrorism plot.
The individuals that were charged with the terrorism offense were trying to seize land in the Quebec City area.
A small group of men from the Quebec City area, including 2 active members of the Canadian Armed Forces, are accused of trying to start an anti-government militia. They allegedly used social media to attract new members and trained in Quebec and Ontario.
In this case specifically, Instagram was used and for recruitment, and the recruiting was specifically for people that either had an interest or knowledge about firearms.
RCMP say the alleged activities began in 2021. They were tipped off in the spring of 2023 and raided properties early last year. They discovered 16 explosive devices, 83 firearms, 11,000 rounds of ammunition, and other military equipment. Marc-Aurel Chabot, Raphaël Lagacé, and Simon Auger-Audet have been charged with facilitating terrorist activity, while a 4th man, Matthew Forbes, has been charged with possession of firearms and explosives. They appeared in court Tuesday afternoon by video link.
The Crown objected to the release of the suspect. The infraction of terrorism has a maximum of 14 years of imprisonment.
Over the last few years, Canada's spy agency has warned far-right extremist organizations are actively recruiting past and present military members. It's not clear what ideology motivated the suspected militia members or why it took a year and a half for police to lay charges.
That tells me the RCMP was convinced in their talks with the Crown that these guys, these were the real deal. This is the real McCoy. This wasn't aspirational.
Court documents show police retrieved military smoke grenades and night vision goggles during the raids. The suspects are being held here in Quebec City and are set to appear in court again next Monday. Donna?
All right, Touria Izri in Quebec City. Thanks. With me from London is David Hoffman from the University of New Brunswick. He's part of a study on hateful conduct and right-wing extremism in the Canadian Armed Forces, and he's in London today. Thanks for joining us. First of all, your views on these charges against serving members of the armed forces in Quebec City. They're alarming. Are they, in your view, part of a larger problem?
These types of far-right paramilitary or militia-style movements really have not been common or even present in Canada until 2016. And it was around that time that, since then, we've had a paramilitary movement or militia-style movement, at least in every single province here across Canada. And as a result, what's happening here in Quebec is really was inevitable. At some point, these individuals, or at least one of these movements, was going to escalate towards a violent attack. But thankfully, the RCMP stepped in and stopped it.
What do you mean it was inevitable? Because these people are just in greater numbers joining the Canadian Armed Forces?
It's inevitable in the sense that not necessarily that members of the Canadian Armed Forces have joined one of these movements and tried to plan an attack, it's more inevitable that a paramilitary militia-style movement has reached a certain level of sophistication and a certain level of planning that we saw here with the 4 individuals in Quebec.
Do you think that some people being drawn to the military in order to get the training so that they can then use it for nefarious purposes against the government?
There was a former reservist, Canadian Armed Forces reservist, who posted on the Atomwaffen website, Atomwaffen being a neo-Nazi movement, and I'm paraphrasing. He said members of far-right movements should join the Canadian Armed Forces because they'll give you the skills that you need to destroy them. So there's a drive for some of these more, they're called accelerationists, these types of violent movements who are trying to accelerate some sort of a violent confrontation with the government to go and join the Canadian Armed Forces. Obviously, the Canadian Armed Forces actively try and weed these people out, but during the recruitment process, they're not stupid enough to walk into and talk to the warrant officer and say, "Hey, I'm a neo-Nazi." They're obviously more subtle about it.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. Is it possible to screen people like this as part of the recruitment process? Because clearly they're not going to be open about what their intentions are.
Incredibly difficult. I mean, any psychologist or sociologist will tell you what's easier and what the CAF is actually engaged in is these types of internal initiatives to empower members of the CAF to report this type of reprehensible behavior to their superior officers, and for the CAF itself to enact various measures to weed these individuals out when they've been identified. But once again, this is an incredibly complex and difficult topic and a difficult phenomenon to identify and weed out. I dare say it's almost impossible to weed out these individuals, and the Canadian Armed Forces is stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to it.
All right. David Hoffman from the University of New Brunswick, thank you.
My pleasure.
RCMP in British Columbia are asking for the public's help in identifying 2 people involved in detonating an explosive device outside the constituency office of a BC cabinet minister.
Police are appealing to the public for assistance with efforts to identify 2 persons of interest. So at this point, we don't have any information that this was a politically motivated incident.
The 2 explosions happened early on Friday, June 27th, outside the office of MLA Bowen Ma. RCMP released images taken by security cameras. They described the explosive device as unsophisticated. Police say they do not have evidence the MLA's office was specifically targeted. The governor of Texas delivered some grim news late today. He now says more than 160 people are still missing after that catastrophic flooding there. At least 109 people are known to have died, including 30 children. And search crews are still painstakingly combing through debris.
We will not stop until every missing person is accounted for. Know this also. There very likely could be more added to that list.
The region is prone to flooding, and experts had warned for decades better alert systems were needed. Jackson Proskow reports on the growing anger and the search for victims.
The search for the missing is slow and methodical as rescuers scour the muddy debris.
I can assure you we will not stop until this mission is complete.
Officials are still hoping to find survivors. They acknowledge no one has been found alive since Friday. The work is taking a toll with so many of the victims young children.
It's very tragic whenever you see human life, but to see a child and that loss of life is extremely tragic.
Yet there are remarkable stories emerging. New video shows a driver being rescued from the water immediately after the storm.
Standing on the top of it.
This man clung to the side of a building for hours as the water rose around him.
I realized the window was broken, so I swam through the window, and I was standing on that meter box right there for the next 3 hours.
There are also tough questions about whether more could have been done to avoid disaster in an area known as Flash Flood Alley. The forecast had warned of flooding. Many people missed alerts on their phones in the middle of the night.
We can tell you that the conditions are favorable for an intense downpour that could cause an event like this, but we can't tell you exactly when and where it's going to happen.
Flood sirens like these could have saved lives. In hard-hit Kerrville, requests to install them were repeatedly denied, despite a similar deadly flood nearly 40 years ago.
So had all those sirens going off, maybe that would have sparked people to say, we have a massive disaster like 5 minutes away.
Now there are calls to add those sirens immediately to avoid another tragedy on the banks of the Guadalupe River. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
Oh my gosh, y'all look. Oh no.
This is New Mexico tonight, where life-threatening flash flooding is washing away homes on the Ruidoso River, south of Albuquerque. The National Weather Service says water levels on that river rose 20 feet in 30 minutes after torrential rain. It issued a flash flood emergency, urging people along the river to seek higher ground. Emergency crews are responding and rescues are underway. In Manitoba, a midair crash between two small single-engine planes has killed both pilots. It happened near the city of Steinbach, about an hour southeast of Winnipeg. The victims were students at a local flying school who were practicing takeoffs and landings. Melissa Ridgen is near the scene tonight.
Dawn, at around 8:45 local time this morning, two Cessnas from a nearby flight school collided mid-air, crashing into a field just behind these rocks. Each small single-engine plane was being flown by a single student pilot with no passengers. The crash happened just 400 meters from the runway as they circled to land, colliding in mid-air. The pilots were pronounced dead on the scene. Both were students training at the same flight school. The owner telling us that staff and students are devastated.
More than half of our students are from overseas. And staff become family to each other.
That school is now closed for the rest of the day. Other students and staff will be receiving counseling services. A neighbor we spoke to didn't see the crash happen, but did hear it.
We heard some kind of crackling, banging sound, and then the engine turned off. And I recognize that because they sometimes do stunt, and they turn the engine off, but they turn it back on. And then next thing we heard is a big crash and a big bang, and then we knew this isn't a stunt. This is something serious.
Like this are, of course, tragic, but don't happen very often. Donna, the TSB says there have been 18 mid-air collisions in the past 30 years. Its investigators are now beginning the process of piecing together exactly what happened here.
Okay, Melissa Ridgen near Steinbach, Manitoba. Thanks. A controversial plan to move Palestinians coming up, what Israel's defense minister calls a humanitarian city, critics say would be a war crime. As Israel's prime minister is on day 2 of a visit to Washington and talk of a Gaza ceasefire remains just talk, Israel's military has been ordered to prepare a plan to move all Palestinians in Gaza into a camp. The defense minister says he wants to establish what he calls a humanitarian city on the ruins of the city of Rafah. Critics call it forced deportation. Once inside, Palestinians would not be allowed to go back to where they once lived. Redmond Shannon reports on the plan and the reaction.
Many people living in the ruins of Gaza insist they will never leave, no matter what Israel has planned. They should be the ones to leave, not us. We will stay in spite of Trump and Netanyahu, says this man. Israel's defense minister says he has instructed Israel's military to develop what he calls a humanitarian city. His plan would see 600,000 already displaced people moved from the tented community in Al-Mawasi to a secured zone in the flattened city of Rafah. He said all 2 million plus Gazans would eventually move there and would not be allowed leave, except if they wanted to depart Gaza altogether.
It shouldn't be a prison. It should be an open place and give people a free choice. We're working with the United States very closely about finding countries.
Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu is selling the idea of clearing much of Gaza and maintaining Israeli control of the Strip. Although he hardly needs to in Washington, US President Donald Trump's AI video earlier this year showed his vision for Gaza, a so-called Riviera of the Middle East. A spokesperson for the United Nations Relief Agency in Gaza told Global News the new plan is outrageous. Professor Ralph Wild has argued before the International Court of Justice against Israel's occupation.
Forcible transfer is a violation of several areas of international law. In some, it's a war crime, it's a crime against humanity, and it is genocide.
Israel says its actions are fully justified to prevent a repeat of the October 7th Hamas attacks. It says work on this new plan could begin during a new ceasefire. Donna?
Redmond Shannon in London. Thanks, Redmond. An attack by Yemen's Houthi rebels on a Liberian-flagged cargo ship in the Red Sea has killed 3 crew members. It is the first fatal Houthi attack on a commercial vessel in over a year, highlighting the increasing danger on a key maritime route for international trade. On Sunday, the rebels attacked and sank another vessel in the Red Sea. The crew abandoned ship, and all 19 of them were rescued by a passing vessel. The American president seems to be losing patience with Russian President Vladimir Putin. When he took office, Donald Trump was confident he could convince Putin to make peace with Ukraine, and he always made more demands of Ukraine than Russia. Listen to Trump today.
I'm not happy with Putin. We get a lot of thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless. We want to put defensive weapons because Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine.
Trump has lifted that freeze on sending defensive weapons to Ukraine, and he told reporters Ukraine is getting hit hard by Russia and must be able to defend themselves. He said he's considering additional sanctions. So far, Trump has resisted pressure to take any significant action to punish Putin for his unwillingness to make peace. Calling for change, why Canadian companies say bidding for federal government procurement contracts isn't worth the hassle. Another Canadian premier is stepping down. Nunavut Premier P.J. Akiaguk says he will not seek re-election when his term expires this fall. He's one of several leaders this year who have announced their departures to spend more time with family, including the former premiers of Yukon, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland and Labrador. A little-known federal government watchdog gave its first press conference today in its 17-year history. The man overseeing federal procurement is frustrated at what he describes as a broken system that's failing government and taxpayers. David Akin explains why fixing it could be a tall order for Prime Minister Mark Carney's government.
I think my frustration has bubbled to the point where I know that something needs to be done.
Alexander Yeglich has been procurement ombudsman since 2018, and he is frustrated that no one is fixing a badly broken buying process.
If I wanted to do my job effectively and leave procurement in a better place, I had to stand up and speak the truth. And the truth is the system needs to be overhauled.
So he's going public with his plan to change the way Ottawa spends $37 billion a year buying everything from paper clips to submarines. First, hire a chief procurement officer, someone, a nonpartisan, whose tenure survives cabinet shuffles and can be accountable to make the system better. Second, simplify complex government procurement rules that prevent potential suppliers from bidding on government contracts.
What we're seeing as an office is a stunning lack of competition in competitive processes.
Third, create a vendor performance management system. He says without it, there's no way to share information about shady suppliers who do lousy work. But a former head of procurement at Defense says the real problem is risk aversion in the bureaucracy.
So the key is people. It's not rules. People, you can never have enough rules to adequately address each and every situation. And that's what's missing. A culture of innovation.
Yeglich says the key ministers in Mark Carney's cabinet are on board with his ideas, though neither Procurement Services Minister Joel Lightbound nor Defense Procurement Secretary of State Stephen Fuhr took our questions today.
The call for an overhaul of how the federal government buys things comes at the same time that cabinet ministers have been asked to buy less. Prime Minister Mark Carney told his cabinet this week, find a way to cut 7.5% from your budgets. Now, buying smarter with a new procurement system, perhaps, could help hit those spending targets. Donna.
David Akin, thanks. Tenacity mixed with technology. Next, how a legally blind Nova Scotia teenager is changing how eye disease is diagnosed. A 16-year-old in Nova Scotia is redefining what it means to live with vision loss. Harry Nickerson harnessed his resilience and determination to develop a new way to help diagnose eye disease using artificial intelligence. Heidi Petracek explains.
Alexis and Harry Nickerson use white canes to navigate busy sidewalks like this, a mother and son living with the same eye disease.
The way I describe it to most people is like looking through two paper towel tubes like this. It's like tunnel vision, basically.
So one night, Harry was training at gymnastics. He was 9 years old, and he ran right into a bar. And in that moment, I feel like I knew that he had vision loss.
Early in life, Alexis was diagnosed with a type of vision loss associated with her premature birth. But when doctors saw Harry, they determined he had retinitis pigmentosa, a rare hereditary eye disease with no cure. And Alexis's initial diagnosis changed.
It really wasn't until Harry was diagnosed that I was fully diagnosed.
Around here, you can see all these features.
Navigating life legally blind hasn't been easy, but it did lead to this, a computerized camera Harry designed and built himself, receiving accolades at the Canada-wide Science Fair. The camera captures special retinal images, then uses artificial intelligence to analyze them to detect and identify numerous eye diseases.
That can help a lot more people get early diagnosis.
Depending on where you live, the wait to see a retinal specialist can be both long, but also maybe not even possible. And so something like this could actually really improve access across the country, no matter where you live.
Harry and his mom have a lot in common. They're also both elite-level goalball athletes with Team Canada. Harry will be heading to Brazil for a shot to qualify for Worlds in just 2 weeks.
To me, he's my inspiration.
Gotta be positive about it. It's not fun if you gotta make the most of it, you know?
Positivity, a trait that shapes this mother and son's hopeful vision for the future. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. This week, Your Canada is going global. We are showing you pictures of Canadian pride that we've received from all over the world. Tonight, we are in Seoul, South Korea, Normandy, France, and Warwick Parish in Bermuda. Please keep them coming. Send your pictures from wherever you are to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.